Welcome to Fireworks. The Independent National Electoral Commission has set October the 10th, 2020 as date for the Ondo governorship election. But well before this time, political parties in the state had begun strengthening their systems and structures in preparation for the poll. But the big question set between the ruling APC and the opposition, PDP, is will the APC's unplanned slips ahead of the 2019 presidential and National Assembly elections create room for a resurgence of the PDP that once called the shots in the state? We will be finding out what the APC is doing to put its house in order ahead of that all-important poll. Of course, in today's edition, we'll also get an aerial view into issues of critical power infrastructure in the Federation. Welcome to Fireworks. Let's take a moment. Welcome to Fireworks. It's your preferred Hard Talk interview program on TVC. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo, and my guest today is the Executive Director, Niger Delta Power Holding Company of Nigeria, Mr. Ifeoluwa Oyedele. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you for obliging us. Thank you for this unique opportunity. Let's start from what is more important, which is the elections in Ondo State. How well has your party fared, not just in terms of governance, but in terms of the politicking, rallying party members?
Thank you very much, Bukola. It's nice to be with you. First and foremost, I'm not sure that the election in Ondo State is more important than having regular power supply in Nigeria. And that is a task that we're determined to crack before the end of the second term tenure of the President Muhammadu Buhari. However, you've asked a pertinent question about the APC in Ondo State in particular. I'm glad that in your intro you talked about slips. Well, now the party is all together. We're prepared to forge a united political party to win the elections, and we're trying to mend fences. And you will realize that immediately after the presidential and National Assembly elections, we had the House of Assembly elections, and the victory was overwhelming. If you look at the statistics, because we came together to deliver our candidates in the election, all of the votes earned by those who perpetrated the slips, so to say, we were able to garner them together, and that resulted in our victory in the House of Assembly elections. We won 25 of the 26.
Well, I understand your efforts to look forward and look less backwards, but sometimes you have to look backwards critically so you go forward, especially when we are talking about the destination we're headed in this interview, at least in the first half. If you do not want to name names, how is the party going to avoid the mistakes of the past? Because there is another group of the APC led by the former Deputy Governor Haji Ali Olanusi, and they are all resolved not to support the incumbent.
Every member of a political party has a right to decide who is their preferred candidate at an election. As you know, the group led by Alhaji Ali Olanusi, former Deputy Governor of the state, is called the Unity Forum. And that presupposes that they want the party to be united. Look, at the end of the day, in 2016, in the 2016 election, the present governor contested against many people, and he emerged as the candidate. Those of us who are in the party supported his elections, and therefore I am sure that when the candidate of the party emerges, he and other members of the party will rally around to ensure that that candidate comes out victorious. I'm a leader of the party. I'm a founding member of the party. Arguably, maybe the #1 member of the APC in Ondo State, because I was part of the Niger committee. So I cannot come on air to begin to malign or dividing the party. And in any case, I want the party to be united, and we're making all efforts to ensure that the party is united, irrespective of whoever emerges as the party.
You are not worried that the party is headed for another big loss?
Not at all.
If this unity forum decides to support another candidate?
I can assure you that what the unity forum stands for is the unity of the party.
Or perhaps, okay, before we begin to do the perhaps now,
yes.
What's your relationship with the incumbent?
Oh, very cordial. Party.
What is your relationship with President Muhammadu Buhari?
Of course, look, President Muhammadu Buhari is my leader, and you know that I have been with him through thick and thin.
Absolutely.
I was a member of the...
So you are a bit more than a leadership, followership relationship. You are a political associate of President Muhammadu Buhari. You were a member of the board of the Congress for Progressive Change.
Yes.
So is it true that the party is grooming you to square up with the incumbent for
I don't know about that.
The primary, the governorship primary in Ondo State?
You'll have to ask the party that question. But all I know is that I enjoy tremendous support. I'm a team player with all members of the political party, including the president, the vice president, members of the National Assembly, members of the National Working Committee, members of the State Working Committee, and even those who are the grassroots of the party. So that's what all members of the party ought to be.
Is it this long-term relationship that earned you your position as the executive director of the NDPHC, by the way?
That and the fact that I'm a thorough professional. I have been an engineer.
True.
I have been an engineer
electrical engineer
for 37 years.
So let's say that if it is true that you have an aspiration, there is a background to this aspiration.
Look, politics is a journey. And we have seen in many climes what happens in politics. It's not an event. So somebody becomes...
It's a process.
It's a process. It's a long journey. Somebody becomes a candidate today. If the party is not satisfied that he is representing the party as it should be, they change. That's why we call for elections every 4 years, is to give the party and the state and the citizens, the electorate, the opportunity to assess the performance of a candidate or a political office holder and take decisions based on their judgment. You know, sometimes you retain the same person as a candidate and is defeated at the election. We saw many examples in the last election, in Bauchi State, in Adamawa State, and so on and so forth. And
so
sometimes
there is some dissatisfaction
look,
here.
I think when the time comes, we will look at all of these things. Our party, the All Progressive Congress, will take a decision on who is the best candidate that can deliver the party. It's like a game of football. You know, you have a regular player, and maybe because he's injured, maybe because he didn't come to the party on a particular day, maybe for so many reasons, you change him and you bring in another player in the middle of the match, on the second half, and then he changes the game entirely. So that's what is going to happen. That should not cause any disaffection at all.
But there is some dissatisfaction.
I'm not
with
sure
the performance of the party.
You are a journalist. You are a journalist. You can take the statistics. When that time comes, we will address these issues squarely.
But you are interested, and you're throwing your hat in the ring.
When the time comes, I'll make that formal announcement.
Going forward now, when they talk about the politics of Ondo, or the bigwigs of politics in Ondo, your name doesn't come out in the first three. So is the party not embarking on a gamble by putting you forward to contend for the ticket?
I am not sure that's very correct. There was a poll recently conducted of all of, who are the most likely candidate to emerge. And with all sense of modesty, I didn't participate, I wasn't aware of it, but I think I scored the highest for 46%. The incumbent came second, 33%, and other people 13, 8, and so on and so forth. So as far as I'm concerned, look, all of these things are just speculations. I'm a very well-known, I've been a professional all of my life. I have been very active in politics, even at university level, even at secondary school level.
Before we leave your candidacy or your interest or aspiration, as the case may be, if it is true that you're being prepared to square up against the incumbent for the ticket, is it anticipating the likely problems, disaffection that could emerge as a result of that? Because we're talking about an incumbent that has access to the state's resources, particularly that required to prosecute, to execute an election.
First and foremost, it will be a disaster. It will be tragic if anybody dips his hands into the resources of a state to prosecute an election. The present president has demonstrated beyond every iota of doubt that the resources of the state are meant for the people of the state, to develop the state, not to run elections. So that's not an issue at all. Unless you want to face prosecution, but that's not an issue. The truth of the matter is that I believe that the governor, Arakunrin Oluwarotimi Akeredolu, is a Democrat. For him to have taken part in an election, defeat many aspirants to emerge as the candidate of the party, and go on to win an election in which he contested against other people, he's bound, and he's a senior advocate of Nigeria, he's bound to respect the decision of the majority of the party. And therefore, he has no choice but to support whoever emerges as the candidate of the party.
Well, other candidates have been campaigning, other parties are hard at work back home campaigning. We haven't heard much about your own political activity.
I haven't seen all the other parties. I haven't seen those you are talking about. Look, everybody has been going around.
The PDP is hard at work with campaigns.
No, I'm not sure. Look,
we can mention quite a number of aspirants on the platform of the PDP.
I have listened to them, and I know them, and we are all on speaking terms. We talk. Yes, everybody who aspires to lead the state has a right to consult members of his own political party at this time.
You have a bigger strategy that is resting on the power of incumbency at the federal level?
No, not at all. Look. A candidate will have to first rely on his own pedigree, his own capability, and the strength of his own programs. It is not enough to don an agbada and go around and say you want to become a political party, a governor of a state. It's more than that. It's not about driving. Being governor of a state is not about driving in a convoy. It's not about a title. It's about capability. You must understand the problems and provide workable solutions to it. And that's what is going to happen in these next elections. You must be able to say to us, these are the problems, these are the solutions, and this is how I'm going to do it.
So that's what you're doing, perfecting your strategy before you come out.
You want to put words in my mouth, Bukola. I will come out at the right time. I will make a declaration after due consultation with members of the political party, with leaders of the political party. And I will tell them what I propose to do, how I propose to do it, why I should be the preferred
person to do it.
Okay. So I don't think you should be in a hurry.
Okay, no hurries. You're watching Fireworks. My guest today is the Executive Director of the Niger Delta Power Holding Company of Nigeria. We've been having an interesting conversation on the Ondo governorship election coming up in October 2020. We'll progress with our conversation now to look at power issues, which also happens to be uppermost in the mind of my guests. Stay with us. Welcome back. Glad to have you on the program. If you've just joined us, my guest today is the Executive Director of the Niger Delta Power Holding Company of Nigeria and APC chieftain, Mr. Ifeoluwa Oyedele. Thank you for holding on the program. So away from Ondo politics now, you emerged ED of the NDPHC, that's the Niger Delta Power Holding Company, in 2016. Now, this organization remains under public scrutiny over the mismanagement of funds. We recall some years back, President Muhammadu Buhari called out former President Olusegun Obasanjo over a $16 billion power projects in the NIPP that were not delivered. Now, as ED of this organization, what did you meet on ground in 2016?
Well, the investigation is still on, and it's not about NDPHC alone. It's about the entire power sector, to look into why we have spent so much money and we have not been able to have regular power supply in our homes. And this is not peculiar to Nigeria. It's a worldwide thing. People are investigating, issues like that. What I met on ground, I will only speak about what the Niger Delta Power Holding Company Limited has been able to deliver. By the way, the Niger Delta Power Holding Company Limited is a company owned by the federal government of Nigeria, the 36 states plus the Federal Capital Territory, and the 774 local governments. So I think that will be useful information to your viewers to understand that it's a limited liability company owned by all of these entities. Arguably, Nigeria's most successful corporate institution.
So the question that will follow that would be, which communities have you salvaged?
There's no part of Nigeria that we have not touched. No part of Nigeria.
Then why do most parts of the Niger Delta, by the way, do not have access to power supply? Even in Ondo South, that's another, important aspect that will be of concern to you, by the way.
It's very much of concern to me. And Niger Delta Power Holding Company Limited has intervened in that sector. But let me take a global view. I believe that the total available capacity in Nigeria is about 13,000 megawatts. But unfortunately, as they were developing the generation capacity, Nigeria did not develop the transmission and distribution capacity simultaneously with it. Ordinarily, if you have 13,000 capacity of generation, you should have at least 26,000 megawatts capacity of transmission and maybe 40,000 megawatts capacity for distribution. Unfortunately, that's not what we had. And in the process, while all of that was going on, the privatization took place. And for me, the distribution networks were sold to a lot of companies who initially didn't have the financial capacity. They went to borrow the money. Most of them didn't have the experience. Maybe one or two of them aligned with some bodies that had experience, but generally they didn't have the experience in that sector. So, having borrowed money, they did not have enough financial capacity to improve on the aging network that they inherited from NEPA. And that's what affected, and then they came in as businessmen who assumed that it was a money spinning sector. You know, it was a money spinning business, but they didn't realize that you'll have to take some time to understand and to improve the system before the returns start to come in. So what happened in Ondo State, for instance, was because the Benin Disco that was responsible for it abandoned that sector when it came in, and by the time we stepped into the matter, by the time the federal government came into the matter, the networks had been destroyed, vandalized, and so on and so forth. And that's how NDPHC came into it, through the president, who directed through the office of the vice president that we should intervene. Today we have restored the physical networks all over the places, and I believe that Benin Disco is doing enumeration to supply meters and ensure that the people.
So power is coming to Ondo South.
Power is already in Ondo South. If you go to any of our substations there, you find power. And even in the night,
power in the homes of the people of
that
Ondo
is
South.
what the Benin Disco has to do.
We will come back to the NDPHC, but before we leave power supply and the satisfaction of customers now, Nigerians are saying that before there can be the implementation of any increase in the power bills, that the power supply itself should be increased, that they want to know what they are paying for. How well is the executive taking this into consideration?
It's people not satisfied or wanting to have regular power supply before they start paying more is an egg and a chicken case. Which one comes first, which one comes second? But I think government is looking into it.
So you're assuring that, of course, supply is going to increase?
What has been happening is that you don't have the bulk electricity supply an area. You have an aging and 33 kV network going all the way from Abuja, for instance, to Lafia. And along the way, this single line is stepped down to feed Akwanga, Kefi, and all of those other places. Now, what happens is that when we complete that network in another 3 months, the bulk, there will be availability of bulk electricity from that to supply the entire Nasarawa state and also serve as a backup to Abuja.
Back to the NDPHC. The House of Reps under former Speaker Yakubu Dogara also called for the investigation of the company over constitutional breaches and infractions on funds amounting to about $30 billion. That's from, about 2005. To that I ask, how is the NDPHC ensuring corporate responsibility and accountability in the management, in carrying out its mandates? That's the...
Let me correct the...
NIPP.
No, let me correct the erroneous impression that created. There is no $30 billion in NDPHC. I can say that for free. All of the money released to NDPHC for the NIPP project is only about I don't want to use the word only, it's about $8.4 billion.
So where did the disparity come from?
The fact is that NDPHC only received about 8.4. That doesn't say that Nigeria has not spent about $30 billion. That's for power in various areas. You understand what I mean? But I'm talking about the NDPHC. That is on record anywhere. And look, what happens is that each time you have a new legislature, they need to understand why we're in the situation that we're in. Because don't forget that these people are representatives of the people.
So are your books now being audited at the NDPHC?
No. Our books have always been audited. We have the 2019 audited account of Niger Delta Power Holding Company Limited ready.
Have you begun submitting your annual budgets to the National Assembly?
No, we don't. We are not expected to submit our annual budget to the National Assembly.
So how else do you demonstrate your accountability?
Look, we submit our annual budget to the board of directors made up of the vice president, the minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, Minister of Petroleum Resources, the Minister of Power, and the Minister of Finance, and also 6 governors representing 6 geopolitical zones. We have shareholders, and we are accountable to them. That is the way it is done all over the world. You have seen it. I mean, look, the fact that the discourse...
But it is the National Assembly that checks the executive.
No. Yeah, well,
so the National Assembly has a right...
No, that's why we appear before them to give them information that they require from us. Every time. We have appeared before virtually all the bodies of the National Assembly. That's why we're encouraged to do that.
All right. Mr. Ifeoluwa Oyedele, electrical engineer, will hope that you'll be able to engineer a compromise in Ondo APC should you emerge the party's candidate ahead of the governorship election. We thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And that's been our offering today on the program on Fireworks. We thank you for watching. We urge you to join us again same time next week when we'll bring you another edition of the program. Thank you for watching. Join us again next time.